Everybody, welcome back to the Starved Rock Murders. I'm your host, Andy Hale. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Special shout out to Will County State's Attorney's Office. I know they are avid listeners of the podcast. Thank you for joining us as well, Will County. So we've got a little break until our evidentiary hearing in May. And so between now and then, I'm going to address some related issues that don't necessarily have to do with innocence, but are still very important in the case. Today, I want to talk about the issue of the fact there was no probable cause to arrest Chester Weger for murder. Now, this is a constitutional claim as opposed to an actual innocence claim. And to be clear, the court has dismissed our constitutional claims for having either already have been brought or waived. So this is not a pending claim before the court. But I still thought it was important to talk about this issue and highlight it to put the case in context, okay? So let's begin. I want to start with, I haven't talked about this book before. There was no reason to. The Starved Rock Murders by a guy named Steve Stout. It's kind of been the book that everybody locally has read. Some people consider this like the main source of the case, which it shouldn't be, but I want to talk about what's in this book and what the actual facts are on this issue. Okay, so I'm going to specifically start with the book. In the book, it's broken into little like books 1 through 4. Book 4, it's called The Confessions. If you've got a copy of the book, this is at page 103. I'm going to now read exactly what's in the book starting at page 103. Okay. And this is how author Stout describes it. The hour was nearing 8 p.m. as officers Hess and Dummett pleaded with Chester Weger to tell the truth about the triple murder. They sat, speaking in soft tones, inside the back room of the state's attorney offices. Weger stressed that he had told the truth and maintained his innocence as he had done so for many weeks since flunking the Chicago polygraph examinations. Sensing that their interrogation was headed nowhere, the two deputies glanced at each other, and together they knew it was time to play their next card. Weger was served with the warrants prepared earlier by Warren for the various counts of rape and robbery that had occurred before the March murders. Stunned, Weger appeared confused and suddenly realized that he was no longer a free man. Each arrest warrant was read slowly to him one by one. The policeman again emphasized that the court would look in his favor if he admitted his involvement in the rape, robberies, or murder accusations. Weger, who was now becoming noticeably nervous, continued to deny any knowledge of the crimes. The chapter then continues to describe how Chester was placed in a lineup and allegedly identified by James Supan, Colleen Thornton, and Vicki Templeton. The chapter continues, quote, faced with the news that he had been pointed out as the robber and rapist, Weger twisted in his chair but stuck to his denials. LaSalle County Circuit Judge Louis Getch was summoned from his home to the courthouse, where a preliminary hearing was hastily called. Judge Getch further explained the charges that faced Weger, making sure the prisoner understood his basic rights. The hearing was continued for 10 days, and the judge returned home. Okay, the chapter continues to discuss how Dummett and Hess continued to pressure Chester to confess, which he ultimately did. The way the book describes it is this. With his eyes beginning to fill with tears, the tired Chester Weger sighed, all right, I did it. Okay, let's pause here. The way that chapter is written, it gives the misleading impression that Chester Weger was only served with arrest warrants for rape and robbery prior to his confession. Okay, this is important. That's the impression what I just read you, right? There's nothing mentioned about murder warrants. So let's take a look at what actually happened. Let's review the testimony of Ray Utze. I've got it here. The sworn testimony of Ray Utze, the LaSalle County Sheriff, under cross-examination from Chester's attorney, John McNamara. Okay, Sheriff Utze was asked when was the first time that he had talked to Judge Getch about this case. Sheriff Utze testified that it was on November 16th around 7 p.m. Now let me read you the next questions and answers verbatim. This is starting on page 700 of the transcript that I have. And again, Chester's attorney McNamara is asking the questions. Sheriff Utze is the one giving the answers. Okay, here we go. Question, and what was the purpose of that? Answer, that was about the time I made the complaints before the JP. Short pause, JP means Justice of the Peace. Question, can you tell us what you did in making those particular complaints? Answer, well, I don't know. Question, do you understand the question? Answer, no, I do not. Question, now, what did you say to Judge Getch? What did you say? Answer, from investigations in our sheriff's office and from certain information in our possession, I felt that there was probable cause. I wanted to get sworn statements, to make sworn statements before the magistrate, and I signed complaints and had warrants issued for the arrest of the subject. Then Attorney McNamara asked Sheriff Utze questions about his conversations with Judge Getch. Question, and what was the conversation? Answer, well, I cannot recall the exact conversation. Question, what time was this? Answer, around 7 o'clock. Question, around 7 o'clock? Answer, yes. Question, had you contacted Judge Getch previously to 7 o'clock? Answer, I may have seen him down below in the sheriff's office. Question, do you know or did you think or did you talk to him about the complaints or warrants? Answer, yes. Question, that was the first time you talked to him about 7 o'clock? Answer, yes. Question, and you told him there was probable cause in executing them? Answer, yes, I did. Question, you told him there was probable cause in issuing them at that time? Answer, yes. Question, well, what did he do? What did you do? Answer, he placed me under oath and asked me certain questions concerning my reason for assuming probable cause. And I answered to the best of my ability. The complaints were drawn and I signed the complaints. Question, who drew the complaints? Answer, I believe the girl had it. The judge had it done by one of the girls in the state's attorney's office. Question, did you sign them later on? Answer, as soon as the complaints were signed, I signed the complaints then and there as soon as they were ready. Okay, pause. Now we are getting to the good part, okay? Pay close attention now. Question, did you tell the judge what charges you wanted made? Answer, yes. Question, do you recall what the charges were? Answer, charges of murder. Let me say that answer again. Charges of murder. Question, did you order any other warrants issued? Answer, yes. Question, what were they? Answer, rape, assault with a deadly weapon, and question, how many were there? Answer, I think there were 6 complaints altogether. Now, Attorney McNamara also asked Sheriff Utze, question, who was there at the time? Answer, Judge Getch and myself. That is all I recall. Oh, the state's attorney was in and out of the room from time to time. So that's interesting. State's attorney Harlan Warren was in and out of the room at the time all of this was going on. Now let's fast forward a few pages of the testimony to page 707 of the transcript. Question, did Judge Getch give you the warrants? Answer, yes. Question, what did you do with them? Answer, I handed them to Deputy Sheriff Wayne Hess and Deputy Sheriff William Dummett for service. Whew, okay. Deep breath. What does all this mean? Let's break it down. In order to arrest someone, you need what's called probable cause. Probable cause basically means a good faith factual basis to believe that the person has committed the crime you want to charge them with. Here, there was no basis to charge Chester Weger with murder when Sheriff Utsi was describing how he got Judge Getch to issue arrest warrants for murder. Chester had not confessed yet. There was zero evidence that Chester had committed this triple murder. And to be clear, speculation, innuendo, a hunch, none of that is considered probable cause. You need evidence. Evidence. But what was the problem? The state's attorney's office didn't have any. So why did they do this? In my opinion, it was obvious. To pressure Chester Weger. Think of the pressure that Chester Weger was now under. This 21-year-old, uneducated dishwasher, dirt poor, doesn't have a lawyer, has now been served with arrest warrants for murder, for a triple murder. Can you imagine the pressure that was facing Chester Weger now in November? And recall how in October, the state's attorney, the state police surveilled Chester 24/7, followed him everywhere. We already know that coming back from Chicago in September, Dummett had threatened Chester Weger with the death penalty. In my opinion, the purpose here was to try and finally break Chester Weger. Okay, that's what was going on here. Now, let me read to you. I think it's interesting too. This is from Chester's petition for executive clemency done before he got involved in the case by his then attorney, Donna Kelly. And I'm really standing on the shoulders of Donna Kelly, who did some tremendous work in the case on behalf of Chester. Let me read this. This is from page 7. While Hess and Dummett interrogated Chester in the presence of a court reporter, the sheriff summoned a justice of the peace to the courthouse. The justice of the peace was Louis Getch, a local grocer. At a hearing on the motion to suppress, Getch said that he signed the sheriff in under oath and asked him questions concerning the alleged complaints against Chester. As a result of that conversation, Getch prepared complaints against Chester, the sheriff signed them, and warrants were issued. As there was no physical evidence or witnesses placing Chester at the crime scene, and since Chester had maintained that he had not committed the murders, it is unclear what exactly the sheriff told Getch to convince the grocer that there was probable cause to charge Chester with the murders. In any event, Getch did so, and the warrants charging Chester with the murders of the 3 women issued. Okay, so that's what Donna Kelly wrote in her petition for clemency. Now, let's go back to the Steve Stout book. Remember how this process was described? Let me reread a portion from page 103. Quote, sensing that their interrogation was headed nowhere, the 2 deputies glanced at each other, and together they knew it was time to play their next card. Yeah, that's right. The next card was to serve Chester with arrest warrants for murder, even though Dummett and Hess had no evidence that Chester had committed the murders. That was their next card. That was their last resort. Everything else had failed. Chester Weger had maintained his innocence all this time, withstood all this badgering, all this surveillance, all these threats. So what did they do? They played the nuclear card, and they had arrest warrants for murder issued and served upon Chester. And what's truly incredible is the book fails to mention that Chester was served with arrest warrants for murder before he confessed. That part is left out. Instead, you are given the misleading impression that Chester had only been served with arrest warrants for rape and robbery at the time he confessed. But that was not the case. Chester had actually been improperly and illegally served with arrest warrants for murder. So now the question is, why? Why is this left out of the book? Did Harlan Warren, Wayne Hess, and William Dummett tell the full version of events to Mr. Stout? If not, why not? And if so, why doesn't the book mention that there were arrest warrants for murders served? It's mentioned in the trial testimony of Ray Utze. It's in the transcript for everybody to see. It was no secret. And there's one other part of the book I want to talk about for now. I'm not getting into the whole book, just this little issue. We'll be coming back to it. There's another part that's very misleading. The book simply describes Louis Getch as Judge Getch. What the book fails to mention is that Louis Getch was actually a justice of the peace. He was a local grocer, as Donna Kelly noted. He was the justice of the peace, primarily involved in collecting fines for tickets from the state police. He was not a full-time judge. He had never signed arrest warrants before. Why did Sheriff Utze summon Louis Getch, the local grocer, when Utze wanted to have arrest warrants issued for murder against Chester Weger? Could it be that a regular judge would never have approved arrest warrants for murder because there was no evidence that Chester Weger had committed the murders? Think about that. The book makes no mention of the unusual nature of a justice of the peace approving arrest warrants for murder in the biggest case to ever hit LaSalle County. Wow. Just incredible. I'm going to have more to say on this issue, but I think this is a good stopping point for now. Whew. Deep breath again. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more updates. We'll be back. Stay posted. We're going to have more to talk about before May when we have the evidentiary hearing. Thank you.